Now that we've connected the horizontal hash marks, notice that we haven't changed the amount that is colored in. So, how many small squares are there in all? How could we figure it out? Well, let's think back to our square as it was before we added our lines going side to side. There were 10 equal parts. Then we added our horizontal lines. Now each of those 1/10 size pieces that we had before have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 equal parts within them. We've added 10 rows to go along with our 10 columns. That's 10 groups of 10. Let's count it out. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Our unit square has been cut up into 100 equal parts. So we will continue to use yellow as the color to represent the hundredths that we color in. 1/100th, 2/100th, 3/100ths, 4/100ths, 5/100ths. We will use the color orange to represent the 1/10 size pieces that we color in. Now let's think back to the square as it was before we added our horizontal lines. It looked like this. We had used the color orange to show 1/10 being colored in. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and so on and so forth. Now, let's add our lines back. Now, the amount for 1/10 has not changed, despite the fact that we've added more lines. This column that I color in orange still represents 1/10, just as it did before I re-added the lines horizontally. So let's show a new amount. Let's show 24 hundredths. I would need to color in 24 small squares. Instead of doing them all with yellow, I'll do 2/10 in orange, which is the same as 21/100ths. As you can see, 21/100ths have been colored in, same thing as 2/10, plus 4/100ths, 4/100th size pieces. So altogether, this represents 24/100ths. Now we're going to shade in different amounts, and I want you to think about what you see. So if we shade in 3 out of 10 equal parts, what do you see? 3 orange strips. You could think of this as 3/10. You could think of it in fraction form, in a fraction symbol like this. All of those would be correct answers. Let's take another amount. 34 out of 100 equal parts. Now remember, to color in 34 out of 100 equal parts, I can color in 10, 20, 30 equal parts, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 more equal parts. Now we colored in the tenths with orange and the hundredths with yellow. What do we see? I see 3 orange strips and 4 yellow squares. Maybe you thought of this as the fraction symbol 34/100ths, or 3/10 and 400ths more, or in word form 34/100ths, 34 yellow squares if we could have colored them all 3400 yellow squares in, or 3 orange strips and 4 yellow squares more. All of those would be correct answers. Okay, let's try this next one. What if we color in 2 out of 10 equal parts and 6 out of 100 equal parts? Now think back to the square as it was before we added the horizontal lines, and we had 10 equal parts. To color in 2 of those 10 equal parts, I would color in 2 columns. So there goes my 2 out of 10 equal parts. Now what about 6 out of 100 equal parts? Right, we'll use yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 100 equal parts. Altogether, that makes how many parts out of 100? 26. 26 out of 100 equal parts. So you could think of this as 2/10, the orange strips, and 6/100ths, the 6 yellow squares, or 26/100ths, or 26/100ths, 2 orange strips and 6 yellow squares, or 26 yellow squares altogether. 55/100ths. How would we color it in? I could certainly color in 55 little squares. That would take me a long time though. So instead, I choose to color my tenths first. 1/10, which is equal to 10/100ths. 2/10, or 20/100ths. 3/10, or 30/100ths. 4/10, or 40/100ths. 5/10, or 50/100ths. Now we need to add 5/100ths. 1/100th, 2/100ths, 3/100ths, 4/100ths, 5/100ths. Altogether, we have 55/100ths colored in. Now, what do we notice? You might think of this as 55/100ths in fraction form, 55 yellow squares if we had done it the long way, 5 orange strips and 5 yellow squares, and 5/10ths and 5/100ths together would also have been an appropriate answer. Now let's take a look at one last problem. 8/10ths. Now to color in tenths, we'll use the color orange. Now I've been doing columns, but I could also do horizontal rows. It doesn't matter. That's still 1/10 of the whole square. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. So 8/10 are colored in. What do we notice? You might think of it as 8 orange strips. You might think of it as 8/10 in fraction form like this. You might think of it as 80 yellow squares had we colored in each of those squares yellow. Or you might think of this as 80/100ths in fraction form. Notice that 80/100ths and 8/10 are the same amount.